Hey, welcome. My name is Andrew Quiñones, and we're here at the Positive Pomona Production Studio in downtown Pomona, Art Colony. I have two special guests with me in studio today. And actually, no, I have many special guests with me in studio today, but we'll be in particular interviewing with two. So we'll go around the room. Of course, again, my name is Andrew with the Southern California Service Corps. We have Senator Susan Rubio here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. And we have the Chief of Police, Mr. Mike Ellis.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you for coming. We also have in the room, we have Mr. Josh and Chara Swodeck. And we got Renee Barbee. And in back, that's helping with audio and visual, we got Angel. And we got, what's your name again? Nah, I'm just kidding. Mr. Jeff Schenkel. He's the comedian back over here, so we like to play with him a little bit. So today is Friday, I think August 2nd, 2023. And we have the great pleasure of interviewing with two good people within our community that are waking up every morning to make a difference within our lives on different levels. So first, of course, ladies first. Mrs., what do you prefer to be called?
Well, I've been called a lot of things, but if I can be honest, my greatest joy was being called Mrs. Rubio since I was a teacher for nearly 20 years, but I'm State Senator Susan Rubio, currently serving the beautiful community of the 22nd Senate District. Okay, wonderful.
So now for the audience, of course you can look at me or you're welcome to look at the camera, but give us a little bit of background. What brought you to this point today? Now I met you at least 10 years ago with my mentor, Danny Oaxaca. And again, you were a teacher was it Baldwin Park or Monty's?
I started in Baldwin Park and then I moved over to Monrovia Unified School District. So I was there for 17 years.
So share with our community a little bit about yourself. You're born, raised, again, a teacher. What brought you to this, Susan Rubio, to the point of being a senator? How did you get here?
Well, quite frankly, by accident. I didn't set out to be an elected official. I know that just based on my upbringing and some of the challenges I faced growing up as a child, I wanted to help in a much bigger way. By way of example, most people don't know that I wasn't born in this country. I was born in Juarez, Mexico, which is across the border from El Paso, one of the most dangerous places in the world. A lot of human trafficking, a lot of cartels, a lot of murders. And so I lived in Texas when I was a young girl. I started elementary in Texas. And at the age of 4, I was deported back to Mexico. And so we struggled to get back to this country. And when we did, again, we experienced a lot of discrimination. So that was sort of the beginning of my awakening to try and figure out how to help people like myself, like my family that didn't have resources or support and experienced a lot of discrimination. So here I am many years later, the state senator trying to help in a much bigger way.
Wow, quite a journey from Juarez, Mexico, all the way to this beautiful California, making decisions for our community in good ways. That's great. My family also, our family origin also comes from Chihuahua, from Juarez to Texas to Denver and then to California. So I'm sure a lot of Mexican Americans have taken that journey just like you up until this point. Chief Ellis, all right, share with us a little bit about yourself and how did you come to be the Chief of Police?
Yes. Okay, so I started working for the city of Pomona as a police officer. It was 1998. So I've been here my whole career and just moved up the ranks to chief in 2020. So, I don't have the story you do. I was born in the Valley. My dad was in aerospace, and working in aerospace, you'd travel around. So I lived in Southern California all my life, just different cities, and high school locally in Rancho Cucamonga.
Oh, okay.
So from that area,
I'm gonna guess that was when Rancho Cucamonga was.
A lot different than
it is today,
There was no 210
right?
freeway going through and all that. Yeah, it was a lot different.
When I was a little boy, my best friends moved away, and they moved to Rancho Cucamonga. This is the sixth grade to seventh grade transition. And it was the first time I ever heard that word, and I just remember thinking it was so far away. It just sounds far, right?
Right.
Yeah, well. And so 1998, that's when you became a police officer here in Pomona, huh?
Right.
All right, I was 21 years old at that time. So that
Yeah.
I'm just glad I didn't run into you back then. All right. Okay. Well, I have some things to pass around.
Just a little larger.
Okay. Oh, good. A little larger. So, as we're here today, we're gonna really explore some of the things that are going on within our community, in regards to through the lens of diversity and inclusion and hate and racism and some of the things that I think are affecting a lot of us throughout the world. So again, we're going to just have a little dialogue on the state of our community today and how do we see it for the most part. Now, we were inspired to come here today. We're brought here through Renee and through Jeff and the article in La Nueva Voz, kind of exploring. Again, is this the article title, Jeff? Stop the Hate, Survey Analysis? No, that's not the title of the article. All right. So just a quick little plug for all you guys out there in Pomona that are listening to our podcast. This is a great way to catch up on community news is by checking out La Nueva Voz and everything that's going on over here. So again, as I open up this page right here, we have our community writer in the house, Mr. Josh Swodeck in the house. And he's been writing articles in regards to Stop the Hate, a follow-up on La Nueva Voz's feature to take a closer look, combating hate by looking for more ways to sow love. All right. So, but before we get into this, we're going to take a quick little break, station break, and we'll be right back.
Hey, thanks again for tuning in to the Pomona Promise Network podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Quiñones, and today's sponsor is our special guest, La Nueva Voz, Pomona's only community newspaper. If you'd like to learn more about La Nueva Voz, or perhaps read one of their articles, you can always visit them at www.lanuevavoz.net. Once again, www.lanuevavoz.net.
Okay, so welcome back. Again, my name is Andrew Quiñones, and we have several special guests within our studio today, including Senator Susan Rubio and Chief Mike Ellis. And again, today we're exploring, just having a conversation about the state of affairs in the world we are today. Now, I got to be honest with you guys. I'm 46-year-old now, and when I was reading this story and when I was going through the survey, I probably would have answered the questions a lot differently when I was in my 20s than today. I think my good fortune is that I hang around with a lot of good people. I'm a part of Compassionate Pomona, and again, I've been running nonprofit work for many years. So it's kind of like people in the church. You know, you're in a sounding room. So for me personally, I haven't experienced any kind of like hate or any kind of conflict in that regard for quite some time now. When I was younger, I had a very different feeling for police than I do today. I'm proud to say that, after National Night Out, that this is past Tuesday, I shook a lot of friends' hands that are in uniform. So it was quite a turn for me as I've grown up. I would say that I have a lot of friends within service, within public service, and within the police department. So again, my personal life, and unless I turn on the news and really tune into the world, I hear a lot of like conflict all throughout the world, and it breaks my heart. It bothers me. Sometimes I get caught up in the drama, let's just say, that really divides us. But every day when I wake up in my community and I see people like Josh and Chara and Renee and the chief, I usually run into good people throughout the community that are trying to make a difference. However, not all of us are fortunate as myself or maybe you guys that are experiencing this in life of harmony within the community. I know there are still a lot of people out there that are struggling with different feelings of anger and hate and loss and things of that nature. And so again, that's what brings us here today is trying to kind of, looking at the problem and hopefully coming up with solutions for the future, right? And particularly because I know a few of us in this room have small children. You work with children for many years. Oh. And I think all of us, and I believe you have children as well, all of us would like our children or our grandchildren to grow up in a safer, kinder world. However, I think that's going to take a lot of work, right? So I'm going to step out camera for just a minute because I'm going to have Mr. Josh Swodeck that wrote this wonderful article that really kind of put a magnifying glass onto the state of affairs that we're experiencing within this community. So I'm going to step off, and Mr. Josh, come on in and talk about your article and how This affects our community.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. I finally balanced myself out.
How y'all doing?
Hello, sir.
We're doing great.
Good.
Happy to be here with you.
Awesome. I'm a behind the scenes guy, so yeah. But we'll get through this. It's all good. As one of the things that I was looking at as we were looking at the data, obviously it came across that there are definitely people who have feelings that they've been, something's happened to them or somebody they know, all those types of things. And I think it's all things we kind of already knew existed. One of the things that I've been struggling with, and I put it in this last article, was this idea from, when we're creating policy and sort of mandating, like we talk about stopping the hate. So what would that look like from a policy perspective? Because we can't necessarily force people to love each other or, even be kind. But we can say, hey, don't be mean, don't do this, don't hurt, and creating sort of policy that mandates tolerance, I guess. But then the other side of that is, in our personal lives, being able to move forward and compassion, things like that. So, in what little I've been able to interact with both of you, you're both very compassionate, empathetic people in a personal life. But then when we talk about policy, we talk about the organization, we talk about what we're writing with bills. How do we deal with hate from that perspective? Because it really is not dealing with compassion or love. It's dealing with sort of like creating boundaries of like, this is what like good humanity should look like. So anyways, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Sometimes I have to say this, policy cannot solve all problems, but in many ways, I think it's not the policy, but the policymakers. And I say this because as a teacher for so many years, I remember we always teach our kids respect, kind words, don't put people down. In fact, there was a sign in my room that says no put downs, and we are constantly teaching them that our words matter, not to say certain things to offend people. And what I find very distressing these days is that we have many leaders that will use words that I'm mortified, when our students are listening to that. By way of example, just yesterday I heard one of our national leaders said, I think he said he was ready to slit someone's throat. And even as, maybe not literal, but those words are so harsh, and that's what our kids are listening to. And they may interpret that to mean literal, let's go, harm someone. And so I think, putting the policy aside, I think it starts with behavior. If we want to make sure that our community understands that we care about them, that we understand what they're feeling. There's a lot of people hurting. There's a lot of people that are so distressed over housing insecurity, food insecurity, and our job is to feel, to help them and give them comfort and let them know that we're here to help. But when they're watching the fights at a national level, at our state level, and I don't want to say we, but collectively, we have not done a good job of bringing down a little bit of the rhetoric that shows our community that we're going to start with ourselves and then ask them to be kind and compassionate. I think it starts with us. And so, again, I know we want to talk about policy, but I think policy will not help unless we work on ourselves and making sure that the message we're sending to people is that it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what political side you're from. Like, we care about people. We care about humanity. We care about you. And we're going to be here to help you. So I'll turn it over to the chief. But I would like to see people really monitor their words, monitor their behavior, so that we can teach our children what it looks like. We cannot preach if we're not doing it ourselves.
That's awesome. Thank you.
And I feel the police department's role is very specific. Because we do have to have good policy. Everything you said is correct, but capturing incidents in the community and classifying them as a hate crime with, we have 300 employees. Are they able to recognize that? Do we have policies in place that identify these crimes? And we do have a 10-page policy. It's available on our website if anybody would like to look at it. But our policy is there. I think it's a good policy. We have a checklist for the officers to, when they experience these incidents, to go through. But in seeing some of the responses to this analysis, this survey, I see a lot of people that think it's underreported. I see a lot of people that are expressing that they don't want to talk to the police, even if they are a victim. I saw some people responding that way. So I think it's our job to make sure that we're doing the outreach, and we have, I mean, I do know we have ways to report crimes online. We'll send an officer out. We'll even take reports over the phone if we have to, but there are ways to report it. It's just getting people more comfortable and aware of the resources we have with regards to hate crimes. I pulled some information from the last 2 years related to hate crime reporting. So in the last 12 months, we've documented 3 hate crimes. And in the 12 months prior to that, 3. So in the last 24 months, it's been 6 hate crimes in the city of Pomona. So I mean, that is a low number no matter what type of crime you're talking about. So it seems to me underreporting as described in the survey is probably here. So if you go through our policy, it talks about having a coordinator. We do a lot of outreach in the community with our area commanders, and we attend community pull-up events, different things that are going on, trying to have people be comfortable with police officers instead of just having, enforcement type encounters, so that if they are a victim of a crime, they're more comfortable coming to us. But I think that that's our role, is to improve in that area, especially after seeing what came from the survey.
Yeah.
May I share a
Yeah,
little bit on
absolutely.
that note? And I know it's underreported. Being an immigrant, Spanish speaking initially, my parents as well, and they didn't speak the language. And we experience a lot of discrimination, and it's not necessarily that you don't want to report, is the language barrier sometimes. And we do have a lot of Spanish speakers here in Pomona. And so I think sometimes we forget that. And when I do focus on policy, I do a lot of talks in different schools and communities, and I always try to focus on that group of people that might not want to come forward. I've been very vocal about being a victim's advocate. I spent my last 4 years passing policy to protect children, victims of domestic violence, families that experience crime and hate. But the other element is making those victims feel confident that if they come forward, we're going to do something about it. And so I always try to be mindful that I have to meet people where they're at, and the policy is one side. Like I said, I always have a two-prong approach. I need to focus on the policy, but once I pass the policy, I need to educate the community. This is here for you. I do a lot of, like I said, policy on domestic violence, and there's so many unreported crimes, and I get victims calling me directly because they don't want to go to the police. And I try to educate and say, even if you are undocumented, you speak Spanish, you will still get the support you need. And so I try to make sure that we do it in a sensitive way that's, sensitive to their culture. And it's no one's fault. It's just the world we live in. And thank you to the chief. I know we've had conversations on crime and victims, and I do what I can. But I also do, in my personal opinion, a lot to hold criminals accountable, because I think that's the other element. As a school teacher, I always know that if I let some of my students get away with things, then I can never redirect their behavior. And so I also think as adults, when we let people get away with things, then it's hard to redirect that behavior. So also holding people accountable is another piece to trying to see what we can do to curb some of that hate and activity that's not conducive to a compassionate community.
Absolutely.
If I can add, I don't know if you can hear me. Shall I project my voice?
Yeah.
Each time you've spoken, I keep thinking trust, the word trust. And as we were taking the survey, a lot of it was, QR code. Several was a QR code. Some I got to see people actually in person. And when it came to being able to trust a policymaker, knowing that, okay, here's this one thing that's going to happen, and are they going to be held accountable to this, and this? Okay. And over again, if you report something the one time and nothing happens, or the justice that you see should come, and there's no justice, or there's no show up. Several people, unfortunately, because you're in the uniform, that's what we get to see, right? And so trust is such a huge part of it. I mean, we've talked about tolerance and how difficult of a word that is for me, or even you and I have had this conversation. But tolerating someone is it's weird. You know, it's like,
I just tolerate them.
yeah, like I tolerate. Well, it's okay. I'll tolerate you. You know, it's like, well, how do we get past that? Because tolerate is not where we need to be. There needs to be an acceptance and understanding, a celebration of a culture, understanding your story and knowing where you come from. And then that's where the compassion comes from, right? That's so in these stories, and mind you, I know I spoke about it before the cameras were on, but the questions in the survey are very like, oh, here it is. This is racism, or this is racist, which there's so many nuances to that question and the experiences that individuals have within the community. But I think it still all comes back down to trust. We have to be able to trust each other and trust the leaders that you put in the office. Trust the people that, are wearing the uniform and being able to protect and serve, and so I just wanted to add that because I kept just screaming in my head, trust, 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 and maybe that can help move this dialogue forward, as well as we continue to create programming or finishing out more dialogue on the conversation on stopping the hate.
Thank you for adding your voice to that. And there is a trust factor, but I think in many ways I see everything from an umbrella view. I see all the cities, I see all the communities, I see all our police officers, and what I find too that's not helpful, and it's really not helping our community heal and have safe communities, is also I see the other side where sometimes our police officers are not treated as respectfully as they should, and I always try to advocate for both ways, right? We need respect, but we have to also respect those in uniform because, for example, I come from, I also represent El Monte, and recently we had 2 young men shot in the head, 2 young police officers, Latino immigrants who served the community, grew up in the community, and left small children behind. And I know we tend to see the police as the other, but they're just one of us. They're people trying to do what's right in our community. They're trying to take care of us. And so I try really hard to humanize them because there's people on both sides, and they also have families. And my heart breaks because when these young individuals were shot last year by someone that was committing domestic violence, there's a human there. And then I experienced a mother crying over her son. He was 32, I believe. And now her grandchildren are going to grow up without a father. But, those officers in uniform are also human beings. And they also are from our community. They're also, people that care, and they have to go home to their families. So in many ways, that trust factor is critically important. But I hope that we have that trust. It's a two-way street, not just one way. Everyone has to be on the same page so that we can live in harmony and work well together with our public safety officers to make sure that our communities are safe. But thank you for that word. Trust is what I'm going to have in my head now moving forward.
No, it's so good. I was just thinking, I grew up in Miami, born here in Whittier, but grew up in Miami, and a lot of same challenges with the neighborhood. We didn't have a lot of love and respect for our PD, things like that. But later on, my dad, his best friend, became he was the chief of police of Miami, Calvin Ross, who happens to be Justice Brown Jackson's uncle.
Yeah.
So I grew up around her as well, which is a whole nother story. But it was something he was my Sunday school teacher, all these things, and I always credit him as shifting that for me of creating the humanity within the position, and seeing his heart. At that time, Miami was going through a lot of major issues. Well, it still is, but that was coming out of Liberty City riots, all the other things, and so seeing his heart and his compassion on a day-to-day basis, and then how he would go in and do everything he could to shift the culture within the organization as well. That weighed heavy on me of the possibility of. So when I saw things that necessarily weren't great, I knew the possibility of what it could be, which is why we have such great relationships with so many of our officers. It's also one of the reasons I remember, years ago, Chara had started for 9/11, one of our local schools, Lincoln Elementary, bringing officers out to meet the kids, and it wasn't enforcement, it wasn't anything negative. They weren't there to talk about truancy, or it was literally there to high five and build those relationships. But it didn't stop there. It ended with it was most of our traffic officers, and so if they pulled a family over and they saw they had their Lincoln shirt on, they'd begin conversations. They'd begin to actually get to know the families within the community, and so that shifted a whole culture there within that area. And so yes, we have to have the policy, and that's why we brought it up. But also 100%, it's what we do on our personal side that makes all the difference. Because policy without compassionate people helping lead that really ends up just being a mess and doesn't really do anybody any good. But I know we're
on that note,
closing
we'll
on
take
time.
a short break.
And appreciate y'all.
We'll
Thank
take a short break and be right back. All right.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Pomona Promise Network podcast. Today's episode was brought to you with the support of the Southern California Service Corps at the Positive Pomona Production Studio in downtown Pomona.
Okay, welcome back to the Positive Pomona Production Studio in downtown Pomona. My name is Andrew Quiñones, and you're tuned in to the Pomona Promise Network podcast. Again, in studio, we have our special guest, Senator Susan Rubio and Chief Mike Ellis, of course, with Josh and Chara Swodeck and our friends from La Nueva Voz. Now, as we bring this podcast session to a close, I really want to kind of envision the future. Now, the state of the world that we're in today, of course, we turn on the TV and it seems to be a big mess. There's a trust factor. Many Americans feel very divided. But however, I think as most of us as our parents in the room, and we have raised our children and we work with children, I think we can all agree that we want our children, our American children, to grow up in a country where they feel proud of, where they feel they could trust their neighbor to their elected official or their chief of police. So again, as we kind of bring it to the close and we look towards the future, what are your thoughts or your opinions on how we can get to a point where we trust each other and we're not so divided, I think, as a nation?
I always go first, so I'll let the
All
chief
right.
go first today.
So as the police chief, I'm responsible for keeping the city safe. That's only done with the permission of our people. And so the legitimacy of the police department is something I'm always concerned with, making sure that we hold ourselves accountable, that we're doing the right thing for the right reasons. I'm hoping that comes across to our community, and that, like you said, trust is a big factor, and that the mistrust in the past or the issues from the past, that goes away over time. And I think that is also, there's two sides to that. We have to be there to provide opportunities for people to interact with us and engage with us, but I think the community also needs to take some time and interact with us when those opportunities arise. So my hope is that there's more engagement in the community. Our outreach, we're always trying to improve. We're continuously trying to improve the police department, and community outreach is one of our top priorities. So I just ask that people follow us on social media, and they see the opportunities, come out, say hi to me, say hi to the officers, and start to build some of that trust in the community. And I think that's going to directly impact hate crime reporting and our ability to hold people accountable that are committing these types of crimes. We need people to come forward with those issues.
Right. I'm going to do a quick little plug for Compassionate Pomona. Yesterday we were in a meeting, and Officer Angela Torres, she's a part of that meeting that of Compassionate Pomona as a representative of the PD. And I believe she's going to be writing an article next month for La Nueva Voz, in particular through the lens of a police officer, of what they have to go through. Let's say, for instance, a lot of people don't understand that maybe there was a car accident and they just saw a little child mangled, and then all of a sudden they got the next call that they got to go to, and what happened just before is still on their mind. So the next call may not get their best, let's just say, for instance. And so just hearing a police officer talk about the struggles that they go through, sometimes being understaffed or working extra long hours or just seeing some tragic things, it made me feel very compassionate. And I saw the police in a different way. So my next encounter, perhaps with a cop, and I haven't been pulled over or anything like that for many years. I've been a good boy. I will always, I guess, keep her words in my mind that I never know where the police officer or the fire department person, where they were at just before they met with me. So to be a little more patient with them, and what they're going through.
I agree. I mean, like I said, we have almost 300 employees. There's 300 humans. They're all great people. I would put our police department against any other as far as the quality of people. But people do have bad days, and but they're also professionals, and,
right.
and they have a job to do. One of the things, it's a side note here, but a couple of years ago we started a comprehensive wellness program within the department.
Yes.
Everything from a dog that walks around and helps officers that dealt with critical incidents to a comprehensive mental health program. Just many different things we have going on. I've seen a good impact from that just in the last couple of years. So hopefully that officer that's coming out
yes.
on your worst day, you're calling 911, they're, having benefited from that program as well. And,
right.
But I have no doubt they will be professional. That's our goal.
Yes, that's right. And yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate the wellness in particular because, again, as Angela Torres, the officer, is saying that this is not the same police department it was 20 years ago. There is more attention to personal care. And I certainly hope I could encourage the police department to take the sky breathing training because it's wonderful.
I've been through that.
Yeah, yes, that you have.
Yeah.
And it's I teach my little children and we're teaching children in school. So because when you learn to control your emotions, especially at a young age, then we become more well-managed adults, right? Yes. Okay, so what are your thoughts towards the future?
Well, I want to talk about the future,
Okay.
but I want to piggyback on what
All
he
right.
said. You discussed a bad day possibly a police officer, but, and I want to reiterate this because I want communities to understand, again, the humanity on the police side.
Yes.
El Monte that lost those two young men that I just talked to you about,
Yeah.
a few months later, they lost their chief of police to cancer. So they were dealing with 3 of their colleagues who passed away. And so it took them a little while, I think, as not just police department, as a community to heal because they had lost 3 extraordinary men. And so it's having that patience and understanding. Sometimes everyone goes through bad moments. And I know for that police department, it was very difficult for me as well as their leader and others. So just a little bit more patient and also understanding the humanity on the other side. But,
Yes.
It's very personal to me because I really sat down and spoke to the families. And so I do get to experience the other side.
Yeah.
And I wanted to share, I think as Andrew mentioned, I grew up with a lot of gangs and violence. My family's members were gang members and, many were incarcerated. So we did grow up with such fear of police. We would not come near police. I didn't want to talk to police.
Right.
But now on the other side, I do my own part to encourage community members to come out this week. And I wanted to reiterate what that is. A lot of times the community members, they don't know what National Night Out is.
Right.
And these are community events that our police department puts together to encourage that collaboration, communication, for the community to come together with the police and get to know them on a personal level. This week I attended 8 cities, 8 police
Wow.
departments. And that's hard for me, but 8, I managed to do 8. Well, I did 5 in one night and
man.
3 yesterday. And so because I need to teach our community that it's okay to show up. It's okay to participate. And I think I said it early on when I started, we have to take our own responsibility and teach others how it's done. And so I post it all over my social media because I want to encourage people to see that we're all friends, we're collaborators, we communicate, we're on the same page.
We're in this together, huh?
And we're in this together. And so I do that because I want to encourage my immigrant, Spanish-speaking community to see that it's okay. We just need to give them an opportunity to get to know each other. But so that's a plug for our National Night Out next year. They're
Right.
coming every year, first week of
Tuesday.
August.
Yeah.
Every Tuesday, first week of August. So please come out and participate. They're here to support you. And you see the children playing on bouncy houses. And
That's right.
the community gets to dunk a couple of our chiefs of to police, and it's very interactive, and they do it for that reason, for people to come out, right?
Next year.
And so I wanted to now talk about a little bit of my approach to solving problems, because it's not easy. There's so many people in distress.
Yes.
And then we talk about hate, and I always like to go back inside to that person. What happens a lot of times, we see a lot of their stress, their anxiety, their financial issues reflected on how they behave. A lot of our community members are dealing with housing insecurity, food insecurity. So my approach to trying to make sure that they feel comforted and loved and supported is by providing solutions. And so I wanted to share in the last 4 years that I've been a senator, 7 months here in this community, but I've been a senator going on 5, is, tackling those issues that are very pressing and urgent for families.
Right.
As a teacher, I think I was in the front lines of every social, emotional, and economic problem every family was facing. In particular, I'll give you an example. A family would come to me and say, Ms. Rubio, we've been sleeping in a car for a month because we got thrown out. And so that impacts me very personally, and I think that's what pushed me to run for Senate even more. So as I started being a senator, I devised a little plan for myself. First, let's identify the problems. Number 2, let's devise a plan. How do we solve that problem? And then you implement the problem. And as a teacher, a good teacher would tell you, then you analyze the data. Did your solution work? Did it not work? And then you redo it again and see if we can come to solutions. So in the past 4 years, I know housing is one of the biggest issues facing our community. And some of the issues that our police department faces is based on those sleeping in streets and cars. And, they have to figure out how to survive on the street. So I created one of the biggest housing trusts in the entire state of California, and I'm very proud to say we've built, we're nearing 1,000 affordable housing units for our families that are in need. I've housed almost 150 families that were on the street, homeless individuals. We took them right out of the street. We're feeding them 3 times a day. We're getting them mental health services, wraparound services, and even we're providing a learning center for students for those families that have young kids.
Yeah.
And happy to report, as of today, we've actually transitioned 47 families that were homeless into permanent housing.
Wonderful.
Under my tenure, we've also have universal meals in schools, which was a challenge. Not everyone can afford meals in school, and it would depend on your socioeconomic status. Now everyone gets fed. And so as we're solving these little problems in our communities, you see people changing once they feel they have a place to sleep.
Yes.
They have a meal to eat. They're getting taken care of, and I think that also changes behavior. If they feel safe, supported, and loved in their community, then they're gonna put out love and not hate. And so I'm glad we're doing this.
It's like the Maslow's hierarchy, the pyramid, right? You take care of some of these immediate needs, and they're more than likely to.
So we continue to take care of them, because I think we could all say, hate, but let's tackle those underneath issues that are causing people to lash out in a unhealthy way. So I hope that, we continue to, make baby steps towards creating healthy, safe communities, so then people feel more confident and put out love instead of hate.
Now, do you guys agree with this quote? Hurt people hurt people?
Well, I've seen it a little bit, so yes,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
I think I've seen it too.
Yeah. Hurt people hurt people. So I think a good goal for all of us, especially as parents, you know what I mean? How do we raise children? How do we take care of a community? And in particular, those who are hurt, to get beyond the hurt so they could be well acclimated, I guess, adults, right?
Well, on that note, can I share a bill that kind of speaks to that a little bit?
Okay.
This year I have a bill that is going to allow those, our youth, I have a bill that allows children who were raised in the foster care system that were experiencing harm, they were experiencing, abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, violence, and it got to a point where they couldn't take it anymore, so they murdered their abuser. And I have a gentleman who spent 25 years in jail. He went into the foster system when he was, I think, 17 months.
Yeah.
And it was nothing but ugliness, from physical abuse to hunger to everything ugly that you don't want our children to experience.
Yeah.
And at the age of 13, he murdered an abuser and ended up being in jail. So I have a bill that's going to allow at least minors who have committed a heinous crime based on their circumstance to not only get help, heal, but not go into the prison system where they don't have a chance to come out. And so, again, hurt people, that child never stood a chance based on everything he experienced. So of course he turned around and hurt that individual,
Right.
and he had, I'm sorry to say, but I could put myself in that position. He didn't have a choice.
Right.
So we want to heal people.
Yeah, I did gang intervention work for many years here in this region, and one of the things that I've come to realize is that, again, the hurt people scenario, in particular, again, with a lot of the people that I work with coming out of foster care or the group homes that are up in camp. And it's just, again, it's really sad. I think I heard yesterday in the meeting that there's 3,000 foster care just within this area. And again, the people that are going to jail or the people that are human traffic on the streets and doing the sex work, I mean, a large portion come out of that system,
Yes.
and so, but that's a whole nother conversation, a big topic to look at. So, in coming to a close, I just really want to express my appreciation for everyone coming in and sharing a conversation about how we as community members can make a better difference and maybe address the issues of hate and discrimination through coming together and having dialogue, right? And again, on the last note, you guys are welcome to look at the camera and do any kind of plug on how to reach your office, or to connect with you, or how to reach with your office, or maybe encouraging people to be more civically engaged so that we can tackle this problem together as a community.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to start by saying just thank you for allowing me to say a few words here. Here's a camera. And you can go to SusanRubio.com. I really want to just be there to support the community, students in particular. That's still where my heart is. I always encourage our students to participate, be civically engaged. I taught government for many years as well. And on this note, on National Night Out Week, I have the chief here who I want to thank for not only your service, but all of your officers. We need to make sure that we are thanking our officers publicly. Say thank you when you see them. I know that we tend to run the other direction, but they're here to support us. They're here to take care of us, and we're here to take care of our community, and know that there's a lot of people taking care of you. So please reach out to us, your city leaders. There's a lot of programs and a lot of support. You just have to want to come out and find them, and so we're here to support you. Thank you.
Chief?
Yeah. This one? Okay. So if you need to contact me, you can call my office directly, 909-620-2141. Like I said before, our big goal is community outreach, especially with this hate crime issue. I would encourage you to follow the city's social media as well as the police departments. There's plenty of opportunities every month to get together. And I would also just encourage you to make sure, if you know someone who is a victim of a hate crime or any other type of crime, make sure they're calling us and reporting it. And I think that will help go a long way with this issue.
May I share one thing
Sure,
that I
absolutely.
forgot? And this is important because there's a lot of funding in the state for hate crime and support. By way of example, I was able to secure, along with a couple of my colleagues, $50 million for support to our synagogues. And when API hate started arising, so churches, institutions where, they don't feel safe, there is funding. You just have to go on the state website and make sure that you're looking out for these grants. They're there to support you. They're there to help with security. So thank you for just this opportunity to say a few words.
All right. And if you're interested in checking out the survey and like to add, again, we've had about 100 people participate, but there's 150,000 people in Pomona. So we definitely want to encourage you guys to share your opinions. And it could be reached at bit.ly/Stop the Hate Pomona. And so again, a community-wide survey. And again, we encourage you to stay connected to our larger community through reading La Nueva Voz or tuning into our podcast. We appreciate if you guys like this content, like and subscribe, and hear more good stories with good people. Again, I appreciate you guys taking the time to share with us today. And again, thank you to our guest, Josh. All right, man. Thank you for jumping in the scene, huh? And of course, Renee and Angel back there. So, Pomona, this is Andy Quiñones. Same piece. Bye. All right.